Okay guys, welcome to the jungle. And again, we are training for the South Thailand Motocross Championship. And if you want to see where we're training, you can look at the link below in the description. In this video, we're going to be talking about how to apply the brakes for maximum traction and safety. Okay, as a beginner, you want to use the front brake and the rear brake 50-50. Okay, usually if you don't need to brake super hard, you will be better off with just one finger on the front brake, you know. Most riders, they ride 80% of the time with the index fingers like this on front brake and clutch. So as a beginner, you will use the front and rear brake kind of 50-50, okay? When you get better and better, and also when the track is better and better, you will start to use more front brake. So maybe a pro rider will use 80% front and 20 rear. Because when you start to get good at the front brake, what will happen is you will transfer the weight of the bike into the front suspension, and then all of the weight is going to be almost on the front wheel. When you have maximum braking pressure, you transfer the weight into the front suspension and you get really good traction on the front. And actually the rear wheel will become really light, so it's not going to have good traction for braking. So the better you get at braking with the front, the less you need to use the rear. Most beginners, including myself when I was a complete beginner, I was really happy to just use the rear brake all the time. But as a motocross rider, if you want to become fast, you also need to know how to stop the bike fast. And then you need to become good friends with your front brake. Okay? Let's talk about the front brake and how to use it the right way. So the most important for being able to use the front brake hard is going straight. Okay, so first go straight. Second thing you have to be very aware of is when you start squeezing the front brake, you don't just pull it hard in like an instant. You actually have to build up gradual pressure, like harder and harder and harder, because it actually takes some time to transfer the weight of the rider and the bike into the front suspension and compressing it. It takes about half a second to 1 second. So usually you want to spend one second from when you start to squeeze until you're squeezing hard. Okay, and if you need to brake really hard, you can also use 2 fingers on the front brake. Okay, and then when you're done braking all the hard braking, you should usually be done with that before you start turning. Okay, and then when you come into the turn, you ease off gradually again. It can make the transition into the turn more smooth if you also release a bit gradual instead of just like that. Because when you release instantly, the suspension rebounds and it upsets the suspension. A lot of professional riders, they talk about trying to ride the bike with the settled suspension, so it's not upset and jumping around too much. So that can also help if you like drag the brakes gradually, like just for half a second into the turn. That will make the entry smoother. And remember to also like enter wide and use the berm. Okay, now let's talk about the rear brake. So you use them together, okay? Usually the rear brake is adjusted a little bit high. It's a little bit over the foot peg usually. The reason for that is most braking on a motocross bike is done standing up, okay? And when you use the brake standing up, the first thing you actually do is you step forward on the foot peg and stand on the heel with all your weight on the foot peg with your heel. You don't even push the brake yet, okay? So that's something you usually do before you start braking. You just do like this, okay? And then you start to gradually move your foot down. You don't just like step on it hard, because then it's going to start sliding. So you just increase gradually. And the more experienced you are, the faster you can do this gradual increase. And then you actually have to listen. You have to listen. If you can hear the chain start to make like a slapping sound, chain slapping, or we call it brake chatter, then you know, oh, this is perfect braking. You don't need to push any harder. If you start to feel the bike sliding with the rear, then you know, oh, now I'm braking too hard. Then you need to ease the pressure off a little bit. So rear braking is done by ear, And when you repeat this a lot of times, you can start to both hear the chain and you can also feel if it's sliding. So you just start to like operate it by ear and feel this one. But actually, I would say, since 80% of the braking power on a motorcycle is on the front, on a good track, then that's also where 80% of your focus should be. So that means you kind of just put like an unfocused foot and increase the pressure until something starts to sound or feel wrong. And then all your focus is on going straight, increasing the pressure. Also move your body back a little bit when you're braking so you don't fly over the front. Okay, so that's how to apply the brakes. If you're gonna brake sitting down, sometimes you're also gonna be using the brakes sitting down. Then a good way to get control of the rear brake is to squeeze your knee into the shroud here. Then you can operate it more correctly. Instead of using your whole leg like this, it's very clumsy and you're usually gonna brake too hard. So that's a small tip for sitting down. But again, most braking is done standing, because entering most turns on most tracks, they have so-called braking bumps. It's bumpy on the entry to the turns, because that's where everybody brakes, and the bumps just get bigger and bigger the more people are on the track, okay? So most braking is done standing. So that was a little bit about braking. There's probably going to be more later, but I think we're going to go and do some riding now instead of just talking. So let's get out on the track before it gets dry. See you on the next video.